Now, still on the issue of politics, the All Progressives Congress has revealed that it will begin selling nomination and expression of interest forms for various electoral offices on Saturday, April the 23rd, 2022. The party's National Publicity Secretary, Felix Morka, disclosed this shortly after the 11th National Executive Committee meeting in Abuja on Wednesday. According to Morka, the sale of forms will run from April the 23rd until May the 6th, 2022. Meanwhile, the National Executive Council of the All Progressives Congress on Wednesday in Abuja transferred power to Abdullahi Adamu-led National Working Committee until July 2022. The party secretary, Iyola Omishore, disclosed this to delegates at the 11th National Executive Committee meeting of the APC held at the Transcorp Hilton, Abuja. With this transfer of power, the NWC will be at liberty to make decisions that would ordinarily require the approval of the NEC for the next 90 days. According to Omishore, the Senate President, Dr. Ahmed Lawan, moved the motion, which was seconded by Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai. The next meeting is the first the APC is holding after the much anticipated national convention held on March the 26th, where the Mai Malabuni-led caretaker and extraordinary convention planning committee was dissolved and the new leadership was sworn in by the president. And the All Progressives Congress will choose its presidential candidate through an indirect primary election. And the decision was reached at the party's 11th National Executive Committee meeting held at the Transcorp Hotel in Abuja. Also, President Muhammadu Buhari and other leaders of the party transmitted their powers to the National Working Committee of the APC to make decisions for a period of 90 days. Among those who will be contesting the APC presidential primary are Vice President Yemi Osibajo, former Lagos Governor Bola Tinubu, the Minister of Transportation Rotimi Amechi, Ebonyi State Governor Dave Umahi, and Governor Yaya Bello of Kogi State. Others in the APC are rumored to be nursing presidential ambitions include Ekiti State Governor and Chairman of the Nigerian Governors Forum, Kayode Fayemi, the Minister of Labor and Employment, Chris Ngige, the Governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, is also considered a contender. Meanwhile, the former governor of Kano State, Rabiu Kwankwaso, who received his new National People's Party nomination and expression of interest form for the party primaries, said his target was to revamp the economy and unite Nigerians if supported in the forthcoming elections. After collecting his form, the former People's Democratic Party strongman in the Northwest disclosed this to journalists that the NNPP National Secretary at Abuja, and he added that he is sure of his victory in the 2023 presidential elections. The presidential hopeful declared he had served the nation faithfully under the APC and PDP, contributing immensely to growth, even though he later realized that both parties lacked clear-cut ideologies. He affirmed the NNPP will gain power with the support of Nigerians and stakeholders regardless of the odds stacked up against it. When Newslive returns, Borno State Governor Babagana Zulum distributes palliatives to 100,000 households. Details of this and more comes to you shortly after the break. Do stay tuned.
Welcome to News Plus on Viewer Television. I am Charles Doke.
Hello and welcome to News Plus on Viewer Television. I am Joy Malik.
Hello and welcome to News Plus. I am John Matike.
Hello and welcome to News Plus. I am Eke Omaton.
You're welcome back, and if you're just joining us, this is Newslive on Viewer Television. A quick recap of our top stories. President Muhammad Buhari directs Health Minister to submit progress report on vaccine production. And the United Nations World Tourism Organization awards 100 tourism scholarships to Nigeria. And on the foreign scene, Shanghai cautiously eases lockdown as death toll rise. We continue with the Borno State Governor Umar Zulum, who has distributed food items and cash to 100,000 underprivileged households in the Maiduguri metropolis. The report.
The administration will continue to support the less privileged people that are residing both in the local government areas as well as in Metropolitan Council. And therefore, it is my singular honor and privilege to flag off the distribution of relief materials to 100,000 beneficiaries.
Meanwhile, suspected gunmen attacked the convoy of the member representing Jos North Bassa Federal Constituency, Musa Aga, on Tuesday night in Miango community of Bassa Council area of Plateau State, while returning from a thank you tour to one of the communities in his constituency. The personal assistant to the lawmaker, who was also on the convoy, confirmed the incident to journalists in Jos, the state capital. He says although Musa Aga, his wife and 2 kids escaped the attack, his vehicle was shattered with bullets, and 2 other persons, both members of the community who were plying the road at the time on a motorcycle, were reportedly killed. The lawmaker was sworn in as member representing Jos North Bassa Federal Constituency barely 2 months following his victory at the just concluded February 26th by-election in the state. Meanwhile, the national leadership of Irigwe Development Association has strongly condemned the attack on its federal lawmaker. The leadership says it is saddened and depressed by the incident. They are calling on the federal government to take decisive and stiff action that will bring an end to this act of terrorism being freely and undistractedly meted on the Irigwe people, and immediately put a halt to the grazing in Irigwe land, and also on the Inspector General of Police to, as a matter of utmost importance, install and institute a mobile police barracks at Twin Hill to forestall further occurrences. And the Nigerian Air Force has constituted a panel to probe the training aircraft that crashed on Tuesday. The board was set up to determine the main cause of the crash. No fewer than 2 pilots died after aircraft belonging to the Nigerian Air Force crashed in Kaduna on Tuesday evening. In a statement on Wednesday by the Director of Public Relations and Information, Air Commodore Edward Gabwet, he said the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Oladayo Amao, promised to ensure a painstaking investigation into the incident. He quoted Amao to have stated this when he visited Kaduna earlier today to commiserate with families, friends and colleagues of the 2 pilots, Flight Lieutenant Abubakar Mohammed Alkali and Flight Lieutenant Elijah Haruna Karatu, who lost their lives in the tragic accident. And considering the rise and state of insecurity in the land, the Southern Kaduna Christian Leaders Association has inaugurated a 4-man committee for this year's Southern Kaduna Prayer Summit. The Prayer Summit, which was before now an annual event, failed to be held for 2 years due to COVID-19 restrictions. Inaugurating the committee on Wednesday in Kafanchan, shortly after a brief handover ceremony of the new leadership, the chairman of the association, Apostle Dr. Emmanuel Nuhukure, tasked them to put in their best to ensure the success of the summit. He said this year's Southern Kaduna Prayer Summit is crucial as prayers will be offered for the restoration and emancipation of the land. He called on members, especially the executives, to rededicate themselves to the cause for the spiritual growth and development of the land and her people. The committee's major term of reference is to ensure proper planning of the prayer summit, which is billed to hold on May the 28th, 2022. Meanwhile, no fewer than 5 people have been killed and many wounded, while property estimated at millions of naira were destroyed following a community crisis that erupted on Wednesday between Yoruba residents and indigenes of Ibeno in the Ibeno local government area of Akwa Ibom State. A community source who could not confirm the number of casualties said both sides have suffered reverses. Although the actual cause of the fracas was yet to be established, the source said the crisis started as a result of cold clash before it assumed ethnic dimensions. He added that the Ilaja people, mostly fishermen, had started fleeing the community through bush paths while their houses and tents were being looted and destroyed by the hoodlums. The police public relations officer Odiko McDonn, when contacted, simply said he was not aware of the crisis, but he will find out. A former commissioner of special duties in Akwa Ibom State, who hails from the area, could not pick up calls to comment on the issue. However, a concerned citizen of the Yoruba ethnic group living in Akwa Ibom State, Barrister Olajuwon Ogunbiyi, who confirmed the incident, described the situation as unfortunate and called on the state government to set up a committee to investigate the crisis. Now to matters of education, the National Examination Council, NECO, has rescheduled the 2022 National Common Entrance Examination, which was set to be conducted for admissions into Federal Unity Colleges on the 23rd of April 2022 to the 7th of May 2022. The examination, according to Abdulaziz Sani, NECO's head of Information and Public Relations, was rescheduled to give states with low registration of candidates the opportunity to register their candidates for the examination. The statement also urged candidates, parents and guardians to download the new examination timetable from the council's website at www.neco.gov.ng. Meanwhile, Poland has released 13 out of 19 Nigerians who fled the Ukrainian war and were detained in various camps. 5 of the detainees were said to have applied for asylum to Poland. The Nigerians were reportedly released following the intervention of the Nigerian ambassador to Poland, Major General Christian Ugu, retired. A statement on Wednesday by the spokesman, Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Abdurrahman Balogun, quoted Ugu as saying that one of the 6 in detention claimed he is a Cameroonian because the mother is from Cameroon. He assured that the mission would continue to do its best to ensure that the interests of Nigerians is well taken care of, despite the fact that they had been adequately briefed on the likely consequences of remaining as undocumented immigrants in Poland. President Muhammadu Buhari had in March approved the evacuation of Nigerians, mostly students trapped in the Russian-Ukrainian crisis. The directive was carried out by the interministerial agencies coordinated by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with over 1,600 Nigerians brought back home. However, some Nigerians chose to remain behind and were clamped into detention centers in Poland. And on business news, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, in 2021 debited 10 banks of 7.02 trillion over failure to meet the 27.75% cash reserve requirement, CRR threshold. According to audited financial statements of these banks, the Apex Bank had debited them a sum of 6.71 trillion naira in 2020 for not meeting its monetary requirement. The TRR is the minimum amount banks and merchant banks are expected to retain with the CBN from customer deposits, and it carries no interest and it's not available for use by banks in their day-to-day operations. The CBN, by regulation, forces banks to retain up to 27.5% of their deposits in CRR requirement, meaning that the deposits are not accessed by the banks for loans and advances. The policy, which started in 2019, has drawn criticisms from most of the banks and shareholders who have cited a drop in their profit as a major consequence. Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund has reviewed Nigeria's economic growth potential to 3.4% in 2022 due to the increase of global oil prices. The IMF disclosed this in its World Economic Outlook, War Sets Back the Global Recovery April 22 report. In its January report, the Washington-based lender predicted a growth rate of 2.7% for Nigeria in 2022, but it has adjusted its projection based on increasing oil prices. In its latest forecast, it revealed a 3.1% growth projection for the nation in 2023, down from 3.4% in 2022 and 3.6% in 2021. According to the Washington-based lender, the global economy is expected to grow by 3.6% in 2022 and 2023 as a result of the war on Ukraine and sanctions on Russia. Meanwhile, Brent crude, the global oil benchmark, tumbled in price on Tuesday, shedding $6.31 or 5.58% to $106.86 per barrel, following demand concerns after the International Monetary Fund reduced its economic growth forecast and warned of higher inflation. And that's all on business news. We now bring you international news shortly after this. Do join us again.
And on news around the world, I am Jennifer Okolo. President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared a state of national disaster in South Africa. This comes a week after terrible floods left at least 443 people dead in the Durban area on the east coast. About 10,000 troops have been deployed to the affected areas to assist the overwhelmed relief efforts. The week-long downpour has led to deadly floods and landslides in KwaZulu-Natal, KZN, where most of the casualties have so far been recorded. According to the National Meteorological Institute, the rainfall has eased since the weekend and no further flooding is expected in the coming days. More than 600 schools have been affected, nearly 4,000 homes destroyed, and more than 13,500 damaged. The authorities expect hundreds of millions of euros in damage, 63 million, around 1 billion. Emergency fund has been released by the government after the region already suffered massive destruction in July during an unprecedented wave of rioting and looting. Meanwhile, 20 million people are at risk of starvation this year as delayed rains worsen an already brutal drought in Kenya, Somalia, and Ethiopia, the UN warns. An extreme months-long drought has left the Horn of Africa on the verge of a humanitarian catastrophe, destroying crops and livestock and forcing huge numbers of people to leave their homes in search for food and water. As long-awaited rains fail to materialize nearly a month into the current rainy season, the number of hungry people due to drought could spiral from the currently estimated 14 million to 20 million through 2022, the UN's World Food Programme says. 6 million Somalis, or 40% of the population, were facing extreme levels of food insecurity, and there was a very real risk of famine in the coming months if current conditions prevailed, WFP says. In Kenya, 500,000 people were on the brink of a hunger crisis, with communities in the north of the country especially at risk due to their reliance on livestock. Meanwhile, malnutrition rates in drought-hit southern and southeastern Ethiopia have surged above emergency thresholds, while the north of the country has been in the grip of a 17-month war between government forces and Tigrayan rebels. The dire conditions have been intensified by the conflict in Ukraine, which has contributed to soaring food and fuel costs and disrupted global supply chains. The agency warns that lack of funding could trigger a catastrophe, calling for $443 million over the next 6 months. Now, at least 6 people were killed and 24 wounded on Tuesday by 2 bomb blasts that struck a boys' school in Sheikh Hazara neighborhood of the Afghan capital, police and hospital staff says. The number of attacks in the country has significantly declined since the Taliban ousted the US-backed Afghan government in August, but the jihadist Islamic State group has claimed several attacks since then. Several bodies were strewn outside the gate of the Kabul school alongside patches of blood, burned books and school bags. The second blast took place as rescuers arrived to ferry victims from the first explosion to hospitals.
از دروازه عمومی بیرون شدیم دیدیم در سر کوچه رسیدیم بسیار یک وضعیت وحشتناک بود. همین دوستای ما که بودن بعضیشان دستشان نبود، بعضی دیگهشان واقعا پور از خون بود و بعضی مردم که در محل نزدیک بودن و زخمی‌ها را انتقال می‌دادن به شفاخانه.
دیدیم که بسیار وضع خراب بود، دود بود، خاک بالا شده بود، بسیار انتشار وحشتناک بود. میگم ما که از اینجا برآمدیم خیلی استرس خورده بودیم. دیگه بسیار یک وضع خراب بود.
Shanghai further eased its grueling weeks-long COVID-19 lockdown on Wednesday despite a mounting official death toll that tens of thousands of daily cases. China's largest city is ambling towards reopening as businesses and residents grow increasingly desperate over closure and food shortages. Faced with the country's worst virus outbreak in 2 years, Shanghai has confined most of its 25 million people to their homes since last month, doubling down on the Communist Party's unrelenting zero-COVID approach. But the surge driven by the fast-spreading Omicron variant has thwarted official efforts to avert a pandemic rebound, with more than 400,000 infections reported since March. City authorities confirmed 7 COVID-19 deaths and more than 18,000 mostly asymptomatic new cases on Wednesday, while also announcing 4 million more people had been released from the strictest version of lockdown. Still in China, China's preliminary investigation into the country's deadliest plane crash in about 30 years did not identify a cause, according to a report released Wednesday. In March, China's Eastern plane was flying between Kunming and Guangzhou when its nosedived into a mountainside, disintegrating on impact and claiming the lives of all 132 people on board. 2 flight recorders or black boxes were recovered and are being analyzed in the United States in the hopes of unlocking the mystery behind the jet's rapid descent. A brief of the report released by the Civil Aviation Administration of China's CAAC on Wednesday gave no further details on the possible reasons behind the crash. The update came as 30 days passed since the incident, the deadline by which China is required to submit an early report to the International Civil Aviation Organization. Investigations found the flights and cabin crew's qualifications met requirements, and the same was said of maintenance staff, the CAAC said in a statement. Well, 4 people were killed and 7 others were missing following a gas explosion at a coal mine in southern Poland on Wednesday, officials said. Polish Deputy Prime Minister Jacek Sasin tweeted that rescuers were still looking for 7 other people, and also Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki expressed his condolences and said he would travel to the area. The company said earlier that 21 people had been injured and also spoke of 2 explosions. It said the first blast occurred shortly after midnight at a depth of 1,000 meters. There were 42 miners in the area where the explosion happened, and many of them suffered burns, while the second explosion occurred while rescue workers were assisting the victims of the first blast. Poland, which still relied on coal for the majority of its power, has seen several other mining accidents in recent years. International scene, man. Thanks for watching.
And that's all on Newslive. But before we go, a quick recap of the headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari directs Health Minister to submit progress report on vaccine production. And the United Nations World Tourism Organization awards 100 tourism scholarships to Nigeria. Another foreign scene, Shanghai cautiously eases lockdown as death toll rise. Many thanks for watching. I am Akema Eniji. Do stay tuned for the rest of our programs. Have a good night.